Hey guys, so I painted this street scene loosely based on street view from Queens, some area in New York. I wanted to use this painting to talk about something that I think is sometimes misunderstood, which is how light behaves and how to make it believable in digital painting. How do you look at a scene and actually understand what the light is doing so your painting feels real and not like a bunch of randomly shaded objects, or like someone turned the lights on in a video game from 2003 or something? I want to help you avoid that, so let's get into it. So let's say we have an object here. So this is a local color, the real color. This is the color that we could see with no light source and no environment. So the first thing I ask myself is, where are the main light sources and what color are they? In bright sunlight scenario, just like in that painting I showed before, the dominant tone is the sun, and sunlight is warm yellow, sometimes almost golden. So immediately I know that every surface facing that direction is going to pick up that warmth. The road, the sides of the cars, any exposed wall, all of that becomes warm and brighter. You can see it in the object here. So the lead side shifts toward that warm yellow pink. And it's not just brighter, it's a different color. And shadows are not just darker versions of the local color, they're lit by the sky. And the sky is a huge, soft light source and it's cool blue. So the shadow side of every object in a clear daylight scene should carry that influence. So the shadow side is pulling toward cool blue, and the cast shadow on the ground does the same thing. And then there's the third source that people forget about, which is reflected light from the ground and other objects. So three light sources, all doing different things. Warm sun on the lead side, cool sky in the shadow, and the bounce light. If you use a color picker and check what's actually in the shadows, the results might be interesting. What looks like a dark red to you is actually leaning much closer to purple or dark blue on the color wheel. And that difference between what you think you see and what's actually there is color relativity. The surrounding colors are shifting our perception. So the warm, cool contrast between the lead side and the shadow side is what makes that light more believable. If you shade something by just adding black or making it darker, it will feel different. But when you push the shadow toward that cooler bluish tone, it becomes more believable and it feels like it's in the real world. So the lead side is a warm pink and the shadow side is blue violet. And these are almost complementary. So a lot of the color harmony in painting just comes from committing to that warm, cool structure. Okay, so let's look at how this actually plays out in full painting. And as you can see here, I started blocking some shapes and I realized I needed some quick sketch before blocking out all the shapes. And this isn't a rule or something, I just figured it would be more convenient for me here. And you can see these sketches are very loose and quick, but they get the job done. My usual approach is to block the shapes without a line sketch, but looking at composition, I realized I needed to figure out the placement and scale of all these cars before committing to anything later. So I just sketched them loosely on top. And they're not clean, they're very loose, but they're not supposed to be, they're just there to help me think. A rough outline of where a car goes is enough at this point. The shapes will get designed properly when I start painting them. So warm bright yellow for the light and dark blue, almost purple for the shadows. Just those two colors. And this is something I do a lot when I start painting. Before I think about any of the details, I want to establish the two dominant tones and see how they sit together. And the yellow here isn't just some random color, it's already telling me something about the mood. It feels warm, almost like everything is soaked in that golden sunlight breaking through, and that dark blue is blocking that light. So the contrast between them is already doing a lot of work, even at this early stage. And working with just two tones like this is basically a value sketch, but in color. And I find it much more useful than working in black and white, because you're already thinking about the light temperature from very beginning. So we're not going to forget to make the shadows cool later because you started and it's already baked in. And one more thing while we're here, I'm not a big fan of workflow where you paint something in black and white and then color it with some overlays at the end. And I know a lot of people do that this way and they know how to work with it. But for me it creates a problem that's hard to fix later. Real light doesn't work like a tint sitting on top of a grayscale. The warm side and the cool side have different colors, not just different brightness. And if you build everything in black and white and then throw color overlay on top, you might get something that looks like a colorized old photograph. The hues, I feel like they're coating the surface rather than they coming from the light. But if a grayscale is how you like to start, I'm not saying don't do it, but don't do it. Or maybe combine it with paint over rather than relying only on the overlay. For me, it's easier to just start with color from the beginning, even if it's only two colors like here, that yellow and that dark blue, because I'm already thinking about light temperature and mood, and that thinking carries through the whole painting, hopefully. The thing I'm thinking about at this stage is a variety within the shadow zone. Everything in shadow is still in that cool blue violet range, but I don't want it all to be the same flat tone. Some colors are a bit brighter, some darker, some leaning a little warmer or cooler, depending on where they sit in the scene. I also introduced some color into the cars themselves. A red one in the center, another one on the right. The shop fronts in the background get some color too. I kept them more muted, but I wanted that variety back there without pulling attention away from the foreground just yet. And at this point, I'm constantly stepping back and thinking if the whole thing reads well and looks cool to me. The big shapes, the warm lit patch on the road, the dark mass above. As long as that structure is holding together, I can keep going. And once I feel like the composition and the basic color relationships are working, I decided this stage is done and I moved on to the details. And now I'm starting to add details to the cars. I'm looking at the reference, I'm looking at some photos, sketching some things from memory, and I'm just trying to understand the forms well enough to suggest them better. I start with the cars far away and I work toward the foreground. And there is a reason for that. I think that basically I wanted the cars in the distance, in the shadows, to be focal points for the eye. So I wanted more definition and detail there. So I wanted enough detail to give the viewer something to explore, a reason to look around and stay longer. And the most important thing I'm watching at this stage and make sure that the new detail I add is not breaking the value structure I already built. Every new thing I add has to stay within the tonal range of whatever zone it belongs to. So shadow details stay darker and light details stay light. And if I accidentally drop a highlight into a shadow area or push dark edge somewhere it doesn't belong, it starts to change the composition. So adding detailed parts is when you could change the painting unintentionally. Not because the details are bad, but because they are breaking the structure underneath. So I keep stepping back, squinting, checking that the big thing I worked on before is still working. The detail should add richness to the shapes without changing the light logic that's been there from that early stage. And there was something I read or heard once, I can't remember, maybe I had a dream about it. But the idea was that detail and light are actually in competition with each other, and you have to manage that relationship. So in bright sunlight, the lead side of a form gets so flooded with light that detail starts to disappear, and everything merges toward that bright zone. And on the shadow side, which is lit by something softer, the sky, it can actually hold more visible detail, but it's quieter detail. So light isn't just revealing form, in a way it's also hiding it. And it means the most detailed area and the brightest area don't have to be the same place. That bright warm patch on the road in this painting, there's almost nothing there, just a flat gradient. And it reads as a very powerful thing in the image because nothing is fighting it. I think James Gurney compares light and shadow contrast to music. I keep going back to Gurney, that might be the only book I read. So there was this cool analogy that musician is always conscious of the intervals between notes. An artist has to be conscious of tonal intervals. So it's not just about making shadows dark, it's about keeping them in that shadow group or light group relative to everything else. For example, shadow that's only 2 steps below the light reads completely different than one that's 5 steps below. The first feels like an overcast light, and second feels like a direct sun, stronger contrast. And this is the thing I think about a lot during the detail part. I tried not to introduce anything too light into the shadow zones. You can have a lot of going on inside the shadow as long as none of it crosses that tonal level and starts reading as a lit surface. And to check that, you simply just squint, check the grayscale version, just try to see if anything doesn't stand out and still reads as the initial version. And there's also a thing called occlusion shadows or contact shadows, that's worth mentioning here too. These are the very darkest accents in the scene, the places where 2 surfaces come close enough that light from every direction get blocked out completely. For example, where a car or an object meets the ground. These spots are darker than the rest of the shadow. And when you add them, it feels like these objects sit on the environment and it feels more real. So in a direct sunlight, you're managing 2 main tonal zones. The lit surfaces and shadows lit by the skylight. And then those deep occlusion darks that are the darkest spots in the shadow. You keep those zones distinct and consistent and the light feels real. And it's a good thing about working this way. When you start looking at a complex scene, cars everywhere, a big structural overpass, buildings, street details, wires, signs, it can feel pretty overwhelming. But if you just think about where the light is and where the shadow is, divide the whole thing into 2 zones. Everything either belongs to the warm light or the cool shadow. It starts to feel less chaotic and more manageable because you're solving the big thing first. Where these 2 zones sit and how are they in contrast against each other. And once that's clear, you just need to find the place or details within whichever zone they belong to. You're not making hundreds of decisions, you're making one decision and then organizing everything else around it. I think some people might underestimate this when planning a complex painting. They look at all the elements at once and try to deal with everything at the same time. But the structure has to be decided first. So details inside a nicely planned structure, the light and shadow structure, will always look better than detailed objects with no clear lighting logic underneath. I hope this was useful. If you want to stay updated on my upcoming courses, sign up for the mailing list. I also have a Patreon where I share full process videos and PSD and Procreate files. Links in the description. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. See you in the next one.